This machine will always be completely full from the previous service. You'll normally see this valve be on process purge. To empty the amount of fluid that you want to flush, you need to switch this to bypass recharge. You need to make sure that this valve is closed, that this valve is closed, as well as this bottom drain valve. You want to take one of these two hoses, which is normally this fully black one, not the green one, and install this type of adapter to this hose. Once you have it there and you're ready to drain it out into the bin, you'll apply air pressure to this and it will naturally push inside the machine in the bladder to push the fluid out of the line that you hooked out, which again is the black one. When you want to take less than 16 liters out of the machine, which is the full capacity, you want to take out 8 or 10 because the vehicle doesn't need 16 liters flushed through it. You apply the air pressure, let it drain, and once you've measured close to that amount, you can disconnect the air line and very, very slowly bleed this valve to release the pressure. And then once you have released the air pressure out of the machine, it will stop draining at the amount of fluid that you want to flush through. At that point, once you have taken that fluid out, you can make sure again there's no air pressure in the machine. Open this top valve and you can fill from this area the type and amount of fluid that you want to fill it up to. Once you have filled it, then it will have this valve open while you're filling this. That way you will see that the fluid is draining out of this line once it gets full. It needs to be open when filling. That way it can let the air escape as you're putting fluid in. Once you've maxed out what the fluid capacity is in the machine, the fluid will drain out of this line, so you need to watch very carefully and then close this valve. Right now it's full and you can see the fluid will drain out of this because it is full right now. When you hook up the lines to the vehicle you're using, sometimes at the thermostat, and you need to use a bypass to be able to hook up properly. This is a Silverado, so we disconnect the lines right from the transmission and we have the adapter to bolt right up to the side of the transmission. You can hook up these lines in either direction. It doesn't matter which, the machine will flow both ways. On a standard vehicle that you don't need the adapter, you can usually take a transmission line that ends up at the front near the cooler, and you can just install it. And again, whichever direction you want, as long as you have one flowing in and the other will flow out. That way the machine can process it as it runs. It will push the fluid through the system until it's flushed everything you have in the machine. Once you've got the transmission fluid hot inside the truck, your lines are hooked up like we showed underneath. You want to make sure this valve is switched to process purge. And then all you need to do, besides making sure the valves are closed, is start the vehicle and it'll naturally flush on its own. So it'll flow in either direction. And if you can see that pellet that's moving, you can see that we've got it hooked up, that it's flowing in that direction with lots of pressure because we've bypassed the thermostat. So it's naturally flowing new fluid into the transmission and the old fluid is going out of the transmission. So you have fluid coming out and the old stuff is going in. So once this is done, you'll see a difference in pressure from these gauges from left to right. And if you don't have enough pressure in these lines for it to flush on its own, you have an electric pump that you can put from flow left to right depending on the hookup. It's strictly a battery terminal hookup, so you can hook this up to the battery in the car or truck and put this in the direction that the fluid is flowing, which in this case is going this way. And then once you're done, it will naturally have a difference between these two gauges, and this fluid will be discolored once it's mixed because it's closed off inside the machine. If you're not sure from the top, you have a pellet on the top of this tank that's recessed here in the bottom. When the flush is complete, this pellet will come and rise all the way to the top. And that's how you know that the flush has done its job and you don't have anything else to do for moving fluid around. So the flush has been completed. The fluid that was left is now mixed. Your used ATF still shows a pressure because the truck is running. And the pressure on the new ATF side has dropped because it's no longer flushing it from the machine to the truck. And then if you wanted to double check, that pellet that I showed you is just resting up in the top of this glass. Now you can shut the truck off, disconnect the lines, and make sure there's no other leaks when you're done. And when you're completely disconnected, you can just switch this to bypass recharge and leave the fluid in so the next technician can push the fluid out. You want to leave the fluid in the machine so then it keeps the bladders lubricated. Otherwise they'll dry out if you empty it before the next service.